The center of a summit is the community it creates. Networking opportunities, insights from expert speakers, and most importantly, the friendly faces that create a safe space to learn and to connect. The three guests we're featuring today have leaned fully into building the community that has made the Women in Tech Summit a space for education, connection, and inspiration for more than a decade. They each have their own wisdom to share about what makes WITS special, its lasting impacts, and why they keep coming back. So consider this compilation of our first 3 episodes your invitation to join the Women in Tech Summit community, in whatever way you prefer, as an attendee, speaker, or sponsor. In that spirit of connection, we start with a friend from Philly, WITS's hometown, Isabelle Kent, the CEO of Philly Startup Leaders.
I think for how many conversations we've had in the last few years about diversity, equity, and inclusion, gaps still exist. That's undeniable. We see that in venture capital investment. We see that in the resources available to women entrepreneurs. We know that less than 2% of investment went to solo women entrepreneurs. You were able to get significantly more attention from venture capital when you had at least one male founder on your team. And we know that for women of color, specifically Black women founders, that's 0.0000006% of investment goes to them. There's just still so much more work to be done when we talk about gender equity in investment in entrepreneurship, and we are excluding the equitable opportunity to participate in building companies and to get the support that you need to bring new ideas to the table, because a lot of these systems are not rewarding the same things that your lived experience comes from. Ultimately, we're alienating half of the world and half of the world's ideas. And that's still very much the case today. There's still latent sexism in venture, even being in the role that I'm in. I do experience it out there at networking events or in talking to investors or in talking to shareholders. And it's really a shame. And so I think that having an organization like WITS serves a couple different purposes right now that we desperately need in business. First and foremost, it gives a space where women entrepreneurs can come together and find community and find support and share best practices and how they're overcoming some of these challenges. I think it creates visibility into how large of an ecosystem and a community that women in entrepreneurship really are. There's so many of us, and we're so often overlooked. I think women account for more than 40% of entrepreneurs out there, and that number is certainly steadily growing, but we receive less funding. And then on the other side, I think that WITS and having these conversations with employers present, with investors present, um, it really starts to move the needle forward and helping them stay informed on what these challenges really are and how do they create systems of equity within their practices, whether that's in venture capital or private equity, whether it's making space in a corporate innovation channel, whether it's sourcing startups that are led by women founders more intentionally, or by simply looking at other avenues where we can support women founders and some of the challenges that they face simply as a result of the gender roles that are perpetuated in our culture. And so I think that there's still so many of these conversations. One of my favorite things that I saw when I ran into you at Collision last June was there were so many conversations of women meeting with investors, and they weren't only women investors; they were investors from all over the country, all walks of life, even international. They were sitting there and having conversations because what we know to be true is that actually you get more ROI from founders that are coming from underrepresented backgrounds by race, gender, ethnicity, neurodiversity, veteran status. You actually get more output because of this different way of thinking, because there's still more opportunities that are speaking to the lived experiences of this massive portion of the population. And so, what I think WITS does really well is just bring that conversation to light, bring all these stakeholders together and say, yes, we're here. And this is what needs to be done to ensure that we are reaching our highest level of potential and ensuring that we're creating more opportunity for women entrepreneurs.
I really think you touched on something that is hugely important with PSL, with Women in Tech Summit, with so many of the other grassroots organizations out there, and really the value they bring is how they bring people together. And when you can bring those like-minded people together in a room, what you end up building from that is these long-lasting, sustainable relationships. We met 15 years ago at a PSL networking event. We've ended up crossing paths and working together on things over the years. And now we are leading two organizations that are working together to do some really big things. So that is what building these communities are all about. So it's very exciting. I encourage everybody, you never know who that person that you meet in a room is going to bring you, right?
So true. I always say you have to talk to strangers.
Exactly. Everything our mothers told us not to do is actually not true.
Exactly. Key to good business. And so I always joke that's what PSL's always done best. We're conveners and then we're navigators. So we like to say that we're the nucleus of the early stage startup ecosystem here because our goal is not necessarily to keep everyone directly tied to PSL, but rather have them understand where they can go for the support they need across the entire regional ecosystem here. We've continued to lean into the theme of failure, especially post pandemic. I think it's so important for founders to hear that 9 times out of 10, your first jaunt into entrepreneurship is not going to go well. It will not get you on the yacht. And so we have to talk about all those failures because you're going to have a lot more of those days where things just aren't working perfectly. And you have to be able to not only strategize beyond that, see beyond that, come up with tactics, continue to reevaluate what works and what doesn't, which is why we put so much focus on validation in our early stage accelerators. But you also need to have that community because failure is really hard when you're isolated and going through it on your own. You need those support systems that can be there emotionally, be there with information, be there with mentorship that can get you out of whatever this challenge is and have you overcome it. And what we're finding right now more than ever, folks are looking for that in person connection. They're looking for that community of finding other like minded folks and sharing in those successes and failures and sharing in the information that's going to help them get started.
I would agree. The more opportunities we create, the better. So, who should come to the Women in Tech Summit?
I'd like to say everybody, but if you're for everyone, then you're for no one. And so
Yeah.
I say that this is a really good time for folks that are in entrepreneurship to come and find that community of themselves, to find those folks that are maybe one stage before, one stage behind, and really offer up that mentorship and learn from those peer groups. But also business leaders. I think it's so important right now for corporations and mid-sized companies to come and hear about innovation because future of work is not a startup problem that exists in every single sector, right? Equity exists in every single sector in a company of every single size. And even on a civic based level, I think that this is great for ecosystem partners and governments to send their delegations and representatives to events like WITS because they can all learn something about how to do things better and differently and how to create more space and more seats at the table for women entrepreneurs and women leaders. Traditional venture or private equity will sit around and they will wait for an opportunity with the right founder, the right idea at the right time with the right team in the right geography to come and find them. And it offers a lot of inefficiencies in the way of doing things. Whereas we see that there's much more of a future in mapping these high output individuals that are experts in their field or experts in their function together with other experts and helping connect them to organizations that have a need. So, for example, a government knows what their goals are and how much money they're willing to allocate to these projects. Philanthropies and nonprofits are also working towards these unified missions and can bring shareholders and stakeholders to the table. And then we also know that there's plenty of investors there that are more likely to support an organization or a venture that has had previous successes where they know that the team is actually a founder market fit, where these folks actually have the ideas or the expertise to bring an idea to market. Because ultimately, if you want to foster more diversity in technology and in startups and in leadership, that really starts with opening those doors earlier on in someone's career and ensuring that we continue to lift up those folks and give them a trajectory where they can participate and develop those relationships, the access, the visibility, the industrial capital that they need to be successful. So I think it's anyone that's in a position of leadership that has the ability to make change and open up some of those doors should attend WITS.
In your LinkedIn profile, you write, "Ask me why you should come, stay, start, and scale in Philadelphia." So I'm going to apply that approach myself. I'm going to ask you, why should listeners come to a summit, stay involved, and scale their careers with WIT support?
Yeah, I mean, I think it all starts with a spark, right? The great thing about summits, and I never get sick of them, is every time that I go to one, I always leave with a nugget of knowledge, an idea that I would have not had before, and more importantly, perspectives that I probably didn't have myself. we did a panel at the DNC here in Philadelphia called Think Ahead Philly. And it was all about what Philly wasn't getting right or where we could have more congruence to move the innovation ecosystem forward. And a big part of that fell on storytelling, I think is where we ultimately ended up. And I just remember you had come into that room and you were commanding that space. And it was a tough conversation. You know, there were a lot of type A people with big opinions and big personalities in that room. And it was certainly a lively debate, but I think you were able to bring it together and bring us to a point where we were able to get down to a place where we had all agreed on the fact that we need to get better with storytelling. We need to get better as a community to talk about what's going on, good, bad, or indifferent, and getting that narrative out there into the world. And I think truly is a testament to what WITS has been able to create is these passionate, tough discussions sometimes, but with actionable nuggets that then can be applied in a way that does connect the world and move the world forward in a more meaningful way. And so I think, you know, it wasn't really one WITS moment. It was just this sort of journey that came full circle the last time I saw you and now continues to perpetuate on with our partnership and events this year. I think summits are fantastic at fostering critical thinking and empathy in the folks that attend them because the whole point is to hear other people's ideas and other people's experiences and try to apply them to the sectors that maybe you're familiar with. I think that's always great to bring folks together, to share ideas, to debate a little, to have discussions. And I think that that brings a lot of visibility to what's worked and we can celebrate in that together, but also keep our eye on what else needs to happen and where there's still work to be done. I think that that's part of staying involved is that if you come to a summit and you leave and you never talk to those folks again, you've kind of missed the point because this is the start of community building. It's finding those coalitions, it's finding those folks that you resonate with or that resonate with you and that you can share ideas with and have healthy discussions. And ultimately, I think that that's so important because this is how those ideas propagate and they become movements. And so I think in staying involved in organizations like WITS and Trabaja and Philly Startup Leaders, everybody needs to bring their ideas to the table. Like communities are not built in vacuums. It does take a village to build ecosystems and to build systems of change. And I think that when you go to places like WITS, there's support at every stage of your journey, whether you're just starting out your career, whether you're a job seeker, and you're experiencing that level of disenfranchisement as a woman in business. But also, I welcome anyone of any gender to come to these because I think that there's something in there for everybody. And ultimately, all change has to be intersectional. And it takes everybody to be involved and participate in this conversation and say, what can we do better that's going to be better for everybody? And I think in having those discussions in these rooms and having these support structures and leaving and continuing those discussions and then applying that in practice to your everyday life, that's how change happens. That's how massive, large scale systemic change happens. It's taking these ideas and fanning those flames and experimenting and getting things wrong and continuing to push forward and not giving up on those discussions and recognizing there's always going to be more work to be done. And I think that that's why people should stay at these conferences, start there, have these discussions, and then continue on in their journey to scale their careers with the support of WITS because, you know, folks are not alone. They're in very good company with a lot of the challenges they have. And together we can share those tactics that can ultimately keep us on the path to success. So that way we can become more representative leaders and we can be that change and certainly help foster that change in the next generation that's coming up and chip away at making the world a better place for the folks that are coming up behind us.
I am looking forward to all the things that we are going to be working on. They're going to be really wonderful for a lot of people and really help propel them forward in a lot of really great ways. So
Can't wait.
I'm going to give a little shout out. So I want to make sure all of our listeners know, along with all of the other amazing women speaking, Isabelle and Shannon
Morales of Trabaja.
will actually be doing a session together talking about the fairness in the future of work. That is going to be one everyone is not going to want to miss. So make sure that you're joining us in DC or Philly. Simple train ride. You can come to both. Isabelle, it has been absolutely wonderful to chat with you. Thank you so much for sharing all of this great information, for sharing your story with us. I cannot wait to see you at WITS and to hear what you and Shannon are going to be sharing in your session. Thank you for sharing time with me today.
Thank you so much, Gloria. This was such a great discussion. I'm so excited for WITS and for Diversitech Summit and Entrepreneur Expo. I'm really excited to continue working with you. You know, you make my life so much more inspiring and interesting and thoughtful. I think every time that I sit with you, I learn something new, and just always feel like there's something that you bring to the table that also makes my life easier as a woman in leadership too. So thank you so much for your time today. I'm so excited, and I'm so excited to meet everyone that's listening in on this podcast at the WITS event here in Philadelphia in April.
Thank you so much. And the feeling is mutual. When you come away from a conversation with someone going, okay, what are the 20 new things on my to-do list to tackle? Because we have great things to do to change the world. And that's a good partnership and a good friendship. And I'm honored to call you both.
I'm going to actually take us back to that first presentation that I did in Philadelphia, because as you mentioned, Innovation Women is a visibility bureau. And that first presentation that I did in Philly was talking about how important it was for women to consider and get comfortable with public speaking. So I generally start off by talking to people about public speaking just to put the idea in their heads, because I think a lot of people don't think about public speaking until much later in their careers. And there are opportunities for public speaking pretty much at any level. And so one of the things I really love about WITS is that you very publicly talk about making room for new speakers. And I have been so impressed with that from the beginning. And I think not enough conferences and events do that, encouraging people to think about public speaking if they haven't done it before. In other words, you have to start somewhere.
Yeah, sometimes it's that new voice that sparks the next person to take that chance. And we try to make room for those new voices.
The Washington event, which I have spoken at before, was one where there was somebody in the audience who evidently heard me speak, got inspired, and said, okay, this sounds like something I can do. And when we did the virtual event last year, she reached out to me to let me know that she had heard me speak at another WITS event, and she was on this particular WITS speaking slate. So it just felt like a complete full circle opportunity where I spoke, I urged somebody to think about public speaking, they did, they applied, and then they too became a speaker at an event that I was speaking at. It was just like, it felt so good.
I remember that comment coming through. I'm trying to remember which speaker it was, but those are the most fulfilling things when we have that opportunity to make that impact. And it may take a little while for it to come full circle, but it sure does feel good when it does.
Yep.
Talking about public speaking, when is your next speaking engagement?
I have a whiteboard right next to me with a whole list of them. But the one I'm really looking forward to most right now is coming to join WITS in Washington. And I'm going to be giving my presentation on making your tech talks better.
Let's talk a little bit about, we know you have been a WITS speaker, you have been a huge supporter. We have used Innovation Women to source some of our speakers, as well as our call for speakers that we do every year. You're going to be speaking in DC at our Mid-Atlantic Summit, and I cannot encourage everyone. There are not even enough words to tell everyone, come to DC, hear Bobbie speak. If you do not walk out of that room going, where can I sign up to go speak somewhere? I don't even know what to tell you, because she will encourage and inspire you to great heights. It is, the best part is not only will you be inspired, you'll actually have actionable things that you can do, which is the best part.
I do think that people should have a conscious thought about public speaking as part of a business or a career evolution. I think a lot of people don't actively think about public speaking until somebody else says, hey, you should be better known. Hey, you should think about applying to speak. You should think about actively seeking opportunities because it would be good for your career or your business.
Why do you think the women in tech community as a whole, business community as a whole, needs an event like WITS right now?
I'm sitting here going, where's the big, there's like a big list. So like, where do you start with the big list? And I'm going to actually take it back a second and say, when I talk about public speaking, I talk about public speaking as a way to access other things. It's the conversation about visibility that supports your career, your business, but it's even bigger than that. It's things like pay equity. We deserve to be paid equally, equitably for the work that we do, and women are still getting pennies on the dollar. Board seats, more women on boards, more women in the C-suite, more women who can look up on stage and see someone who could be a mentor for them or an example for them. And I don't think about public speaking as the end. I think about it as the path to different things. And I see WITS and the work that WITS does, frankly, the exact same way. The sharing of knowledge, the connections with people who could be a role model, who could be a mentor, who are an example. That's just one side. Then on the other side is just all the knowledge sharing. Like, I think one of the things that WITS has shown me over the years is just because I am not a programmer does not mean I do not work in technology. Saying that another way, I'm not a programmer. I'm not technical, and yet I have spent my entire career working inside technology companies. You know, those big enterprise software companies I worked with, I had to be buzzword compliant. I had to be hanging out with people who were very technical and understanding the messages. And I think so many of us work in technology companies without being acknowledged as part of that community. So if you're in marketing, if you are in HR, you are still a woman in technology if you're working inside a technical company. And so I think that's one of the unique things about WITS is being that open and welcoming to all the women who work in technology. Like, I've always thought that was something that was important and different in WITS. I do see a lot of events and conferences out there that are not as welcoming. And so I think that's a real differentiator for WITS and the WITS community. And to have people just surrounding you who are technical, who are interested in sharing their knowledge. Like, I look at the agenda for all the WITS events and I'm like, oh my God, there's so much information here, so much interesting stuff that I'm just sometimes a little overwhelmed with the amount of stuff. And I'm like, I want to go and see it all. Can I clone? Can I split myself to be able to be in the different rooms? So it's great in terms of the programming, but then there's also the networking and social aspect of it. Everybody is there to help each other. So just can't say enough good stuff about it. I'm going to stop now. Stop myself, hold myself back.
Thank you. It is all very much appreciated. And your recognition of the fact that WITS is for everyone that's what we're trying to do. We really are trying to be that conference for every woman who works in technology, and we want everybody there. That's how we build strong networks.
Yep. And we do need to work together to pull different people into the industry to prevent people from leaving. I think that there is a bit of a leaky pipe in this industry for women in particular. And we want to make sure that people feel supported throughout their careers.
Exactly. And part of that is having that very broad, very deep network. And it means having women that do all kinds of different things at all kinds of different levels of their careers as your support system. So I want to talk about WITS speakers for a minute, because you're the speaking expert and you've been a WITS speaker and you've met a lot of our WITS speakers. So if you had to sketch a profile of who should speak at WITS, who would that be?
Who should speak at WITS?
Yes.
I think probably some of the best speakers I've seen at WITS have been people you wouldn't necessarily think of as speakers. And by the way, they're fantastic. But I think a lot of times they are people who have deep knowledge. They have been doing something themselves that they are interested in sharing with others. I feel like so many of them might not necessarily think of themselves as speakers, but they understand the knowledge that they have and that they've learned, and they are open to sharing it with other people. And a lot of speakers are probably better identified as subject matter experts than speakers, because they're sharing the things that they do every day. They're sharing the things that they've learned on the job. And they are also there to learn at the same time they share their knowledge. So subject matter experts often feels like a better designation than speakers.
So Bobbie, how did you just give the explanation of how we choose the speakers for WITS?
I've been hanging with you a while.
Yeah, exactly. We've known each other for a while, because that really is a lot of how we choose speakers. Is we're looking for the people who want to talk about the very cool, interesting, fascinating things that they're building.
Yep.
So, touched on this a little bit in your answer, but maybe we could expand on it a little. If someone were to ask you this question, what would be your answer? Do you have to work with technology or work for a tech company to speak at WITS?
I hate to say it, but these days almost every company is a technology company. We are surrounded by it. There's more technology on my phone than went to the moon, in the 60s. And we are constantly surrounded by it. But it's just understanding the technology that happens on a day in, day out basis, I think is important to everything we do professionally these days. Like I'm in marketing. The marketing technology stack these days is so complex. You have to understand technology. You have to understand everything from what gets people to your website to how does social media work, all kinds of different things.
Oh, most definitely. So how about speaking experience? So is WITS a good way to develop your speaking skills?
Yes. And I do think that your openness to new speakers is terrific. And I do think that everybody who is just getting started, you have knowledge. You should feel comfortable in your knowledge.
Well, Bobbie, this has been such an enjoyable conversation and such great information. I know our listeners are taking away some great things to think about, and hopefully their minds are spinning with what are the things they can talk about. And hopefully it means I'm going to see a bunch of new speaking proposals for WITS. I cannot wait to see you in DC. It has been much too long since I've gotten to see you in person, so I'm very excited. Thank you so much for spending time with us. Everyone, please be sure and go to innovationwomen.com and check it out. Sign up, get your profile. If you are an event manager, make sure you're taking a look at the speakers on there. Bobbie, if our listeners want to get in touch with you, beyond reaching you on Innovation Women, how can they do that?
Well, we mentioned Lioness Magazine a couple times, and lionessmagazine.com. Definitely check it out if you are a female entrepreneur and you are looking for information and inspiration for your entrepreneurial ventures. Lionessmagazine.com is a great place to catch up with me. Also, I'm pretty findable out there in the universe, relatively active in social media. Innovation Women is on both Instagram and Twitter at WomenInno.
Let's get all of these wonderful women and more women some more visibility. Thank you all so much. Thank you, Bobbie, for spending time with us today.
Gloria, I can't thank you enough for having me on your podcast. It's so good to see you. Cannot wait for our next conversation.
I think you might have captured it all. I would also consider you a friend. So I think we might have missed that small thing. But to your point, we've worked together through a few different scenarios and organizations. And I think what we've discovered is we have a similar passion in the work that we do, and that just keeps driving us to work together.
Absolutely. And so that is why I have asked Amy to join us on Wits and Wisdom. And you have not only worked on the Women in Tech Summit, you have been a volunteer, you have been a speaker, you are now on the board involvement of the foundation that runs the Women in Tech Summit. You kind of done it all with WITS. So if there's anybody who knows why people should support WITS, why people should come, why they should come to WITS to see you, it is definitely you. Basic question for you. Why in today's business and tech world do you think WITS is important?
I almost want to say, well, 5 years ago, why was it important? And I say that because, so much has not changed in the landscape for women in tech. The reasons that have existed will continue to exist. One, for the women themselves, right? I can't even begin to explain, even as somebody that, I could be in the weeds working at WITS, like I'm running around from room to room, and the little bit of time that I would get to sit down and hear a speaker, to talk to some women would fuel my soul almost to get to the next level, right? To be able to have that community of women around you is so important, to hear women that were in all different levels within tech, right? They're in tech adjacent roles that, or tech adjacent companies, I should say, because like there's this misconception sometimes that to work in tech, you have to be in a quote unquote tech company. Well, there's not really a company out there that doesn't use technology these days. So that's out the window. But there really is so much power in having that community around you. You're surrounded by comfortable people that are there to support you, cheerleaders, people that believe in you, people that want to see you succeed, people that are there for very similar reasons, right? And
Sure.
I just want to touch on being a cheerleader is one of those things that you almost have to be confident in yourself to be able to not only not want to tear people down, but want to build them up. And I think, a natural thing when you're younger is it's very competitive in the workplace. And I think, unfortunately, some women will tear each other down because they see each other as competition, but there is strength in numbers. And I promise you that if you are building other people up, you will reap the benefits of their growth because they will build the next person up, and then that person will build the next person up. And you have this beautiful cascading effect of, just a little bit of positive energy and intentionality in how you approach people and how you support people can go a long way.
I absolutely agree. And also, it's astounding to watch how supporting someone else actually builds your own confidence. Being that cheerleader for another woman gives you that boost that sometimes you need. It's like, I can be a cheerleader for that woman and support everything that she's doing, and being able to be a part of that gives you those feel goods that sometimes you need to take that little bit of a risk and do that next thing yourself. And I think we all could use a little bit more of that all the time.
Then you have for the companies themselves, if they're coming in from like a sponsor standpoint, or if you're sending your employees, the benefit that you're getting from the talks. I mean, they are all over the board, from very incredibly deep technology focused, like kind of niche things, to broader thought provoking case studies into, different technology. And there's something for everybody. There are things for people that you didn't know it was for you, and it's for you. There are workshops so you can get some hands-on experience. And it's one of those things that, it's the gift that keeps on giving, because most folks, I would say everybody, if you are wanting to meet people at the summit, you will meet people, and you will make sometimes these, lifelong, career long connections that can really help you in the future. I have met people at WITS that I am still connected to this day, that, I met as
Yeah.
an attendee, as well as other conferences. It's one of those things that when you put yourself out there and you have the shared experience, and that becomes now a person that, is in your corner. So it's definitely helpful with that. I never walk away from a WITS. Again, I have not been able to just be an attendee in a long time, but I never walk away without a long list of, whoa, this is what I could do to improve Amy. This is what I can do to improve this one tricky situation I'm dealing with. Like, there are so many takeaways from every session that, there's so much to learn. So for, as an employer, if you're sending your employees, you're getting all that. You're welcome. Also, if you're looking to hire, you can't find a more perfect place to find some really talented women in tech that are serious about their careers. Nothing says you're serious more than spending a couple of days learning.
I would absolutely agree. So, if you had to sketch a profile of who should support the WITS mission, what would that profile look like?
You are a business that has employees in technology. Does that narrow it down enough?
That's it. Yes, that narrows it
That's
down
it.
enough.
Yeah, because if you fit in that category and you have a ton of women employees, that's great, awesome. Send them to WITS. If you are in that category and you have a few women, maybe you need to come sponsor. I mean, the sky's the limit really for you.
Do you have to work with technology or work for a tech company to support WITS?
You do not. You do not.
Mhm.
And as I said, there's not a company out there that's not using technology. You don't have to be that company that works with technology, but you most likely are in some capacity. So I feel pretty confident that pretty much any business could benefit from supporting WITS, whether that be from sending your employees or from a sponsorship standpoint, helping spread the word. Anything that you can do to be helpful for women in tech in the Women in Tech Summit is appreciated and needed.
I agree. We would love to talk to them. So, you've been involved with WITS for a while now, and you've been involved with a lot of our partner organizations and our sponsors. Do you have a favorite story about the impact of an individual or an organization support?
I'm sure I do. I have stories for days.
Yeah, it's like there's so many over, the last 10 plus years of all the different organizations that we've worked with and all of the amazing women that we've met, that sometimes picking that favorite one gets really
It's
difficult.
difficult. It's really difficult. AWS, they jump to mind
Mhm.
because they sponsored in several different ways. They sponsored financially, but then they also wanted to help out. So we were able to engage them not just within WITS, but within our other nonprofit programs. So with Tech Girls, they became huge supporters, and they were just kind of like kept giving, which was more than we could have asked for. So that is one that stands out to me. I mean, they're really, like you said, there are so many, and every sponsor stands out. just because, that they're going out of their way to support. So tough question.
It is a very tough question because,
What about you?
it's funny because I don't know that I can pick a particular one because with being the one who interacts with all of our partner and our sponsor organizations, I develop relationships with each of them. It has never been transactional with any of our speakers, with any of our sponsors.
Right.
And there's so many different ways that, sponsors can get involved with WITS. We customize all of our sponsorships. So we really encourage sponsors to get creative, find different ways to set up their presence at the event. If they have ideas of things that they've done in the past, or if they want to brainstorm with us on new ways to engage with our audience, we're always happy to have them come up with those. We really want to focus on what is their objective for being at the event. Are they looking to recruit? Are they just looking to make a statement of their support for diversity and equality and equity in tech? Are they looking for new customers? What is it that they are looking to achieve through their sponsorship? So we really base the customizable sponsorship on that, and then let's figure out what benefits and how they can create their presence that helps them work toward those objectives. And we've had some sponsors over the years that have really taken that creativity to some really wonderful levels.
Right.
It is something that we've been very lucky that it's not just, oh, here's a checklist of the benefits you get as a sponsor, and here, send us your check. It has been, let's build a sponsor package that works for you, that works for our attendees. Let's customize everything. And it becomes a relationship. And that's why you see so many of them come back every year. So like picking a favorite story or a favorite event, I can't. I get excited to talk to these people.
It's a really tough question. It's hard to pick. And then, I think about, like, as you're talking, I'm thinking about all the different sponsors. We had a sponsor that was doing headshots, and that was that was very impactful for so many women, because of course I got my headshot done, and standing in line talking to women. They're like, I don't have a headshot. This is going to be my first headshot. They've taken selfies with their cell phones.
Or, how many of them have we heard from years later that I've gotten emails from them? Hey, I talked to a sponsor at your event and I got a new job with a raise.
Yes, I love those.
Or, I never thought about working in this field until I talked to, the sponsor at your event and I'm going in for an interview. There have just been so many great stories over the years, and so many of our partners who also have come in and helped us spread the word and helped us find speakers, helped us find sponsors, supported us in so many amazing ways. I mean, that's why we're still here 10 years later, why we're still growing. And I can't tell you how excited I am to be back to get to see all of them in person again, finally.
In person.
Oh, I know.
It's a dream.
It's very exciting. It's the dream. I have another question for you, and this one's kind of around tech girls and WITS. So you won recognition for your work pivoting tech girls to virtual from in person. Had to do that at an extremely fast, furious, incredibly successful pace at the beginning of the pandemic. Talk to us a little bit about that experience and what it did to fortify your commitment to WITS.
I love this question. So the pandemic, it feels very weird to still be talking about this, but we'll make it brief. I mean, I think everybody's in the same boat. At the beginning of the pandemic, we were stuck at home. Nobody could go anywhere. All of our tech girls workshops at that point had been in person. We had no virtual. workshops at that point. And it wasn't a matter of how do we do this at first. It was like, how quickly can we do this? Because we didn't want any of the girls to lose the benefit of having their workshops. And we didn't know, to be honest, if there was going to be a great reception to it. We were a little nervous because the students at this time had nothing but online, Zoom classes and things like that. And they were a little over it at that point. So we weren't sure how it would work out. But I mean, it was just a matter of let's do this. How quickly can we do this? Let's just get it done. And I keep saying let's because it wasn't me, it was the team that I had around me, which included you, Gloria. We were all in it together. And I think we all understood that the mission didn't stop because of the pandemic and that we just needed to figure out how to recalibrate our path to get to the mission. So, we just moved quickly. We had a wonderful set of volunteers that moved quickly with us. As I mentioned, my team was like, let's do this. Everybody was like moving forward. And I think that what we found during that time was that not only were the Tech Girls students, in the community, they were so grateful for us to continue to offer. We realized how much it's needed. We've always known, that Tech Girls was a program that was very popular, and we knew that the girls really wanted it, but we didn't realize how much it would mean if they didn't have it anymore. And that was the same thing for WITS, because as we were pivoting Tech Girls, we were thinking, okay, it's a similar situation with the Women in Tech Summit. This is a community that's used to coming together, having each other. And I remember the first virtual WITS was we didn't know. We built the plane while we were flying. We had some new technology we were using, but we were all in. We were like, we're going to figure this out. Everybody was on board. And, I mentioned that, Gloria, you were helpful for us in the transition at Tech Girls. And you did have a hat that hovered over Tech Girls and WITS at the same time, but more from a marketing standpoint. But you were helping on anything. You're like, you need me to pack some boxes. What are we going to do? So you were right there. And the same thing happened with WITS. All of the Tech Girls team was right there and saying, how are we going to help with WITS? How are we going to keep this going? And I think it just goes to show that our commitment is not about Tech Girls. It's not about the Women in Tech Summit. It's about building up women in tech. It's about having that support for women. And it just happens to be that where we're able to pour out our hearts into this is through the Women in Tech Summit and through Tech Girls at that time, in this time.
Yeah, it was an adventure, and we made it through extremely successfully, and we're still going, and we are ready to be back in person. Amy, it has been so wonderful to have you on Wits and Wisdom, and thank you so much for sharing your journey and your insights and for talking about WITS and just spending time with us. Really, really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me, Gloria. It's a pleasure to have a conversation with you. I love talking about women and tech. I could do this all day. So thank you so much for having me on. I look forward to seeing you in person in DC.
I'm very excited. All right. Thank you to all of our listeners for joining us on Wits and Wisdom. We can't wait to have you join us again for our next episode. Thank you again for joining us, and we'll talk to you soon.
Ready to learn more about the Women in Tech Summit? Visit our website at womenintechsummit.net. That's womenintechsummit.net to view our most up-to-date event schedules, calls for speakers, and sponsorship opportunities. If you enjoyed this episode, bookmark the show, give us a follow, or leave a review on Apple Podcasts. It helps us educate, inspire, and connect with even more movers and shakers within and beyond the technology industry. Thanks for listening, and see you here again soon on Wits and Wisdom, a podcast from the Women in Tech Summit and the Inspiring Tech Foundation.